Hey everyone, as you start cooking plant-based, you're going to start seeing a lot of unfamiliar ingredients in the recipes that you start to see. So I want to go over a few of the most unfamiliar ingredients that you may run across and tell you a little bit about what they are and where you can find them. So I've also included a PDF on this which follows the video. If you want to print that out ahead of time and follow along, feel free. So this is getting familiar with new ingredients, and I've got the ingredients listed in alphabetical order. So the first one I want to talk about is agar powder. So agar powder is obtained from sea plants. Actually, a red algae plant is where this powder is made from. And when mixed with water, it's a very gelatinous. It turns into a very thick gelatinous substance, which you can use to make Colby cheese. It's used in certain soups. It's used to make jellies and things like that. So it's quite safe to use, and it usually comes in powder form, such as in this bottle, or you can find it in flake form in most Asian sections of the store. It would be called agar flakes in that case. So it's always harder to find it in powder form in the store. I used to be able to find it in bulk, but not anymore. So I prefer to use the powder, but the flakes are fine too. You have to use a lot more flakes in comparison to powder when making things like cheese. The next thing I want to talk about is Bragg's liquid aminos. In Bragg's, it's just called Bragg's for short. If you hear somebody talking about Bragg's, they're talking about Bragg's liquid aminos, which is a seasoning sauce made from slightly fermented soybeans and purified water, and these are non-GMO soybeans that they use, and it gives a salty, almost deep savory flavor. What do they call it? A umami flavor, which is a deep savory flavor to things that it's added to. This is also found in the Asian section, typically in the stores. Now, there's other forms of liquid aminos which are very similar. So if you can't find Bragg's, just buy a liquid aminos. Not coconut liquid aminos there. We're talking about the soy-based liquid aminos. So that's Bragg's. Bulgur wheat is something we use sometimes as a meat replacement and sometimes to make a salad. Bulgur salad is really good. But bulgur is really a grain made from dried wheat, and it's been partially pre-boiled, so it cooks rather quickly when you put it on the stove. So it's used in salads, vegan meatloaves, and other recipes. And it's usually in the Bob's Red Mill section of the store. So when you see something called for bulgur wheat, this is what it looks like. It's usually in a bag, and it might say red bulgur, that's fine. Next is cacao powder. So cacao is basically made from the whole cocoa bean, ground up. It's raw chocolate. It's far less processed than cocoa or other types of processed, especially Dutch processed cocoa, which is even processed further than regular cocoa. And this is the healthy form of chocolate. So when you hear that, chocolate is healthy for all the antioxidants, this is where it is. It's not in the Hershey bar. So this is the healthy chocolate with all the antioxidants, minerals, and nutrients. And this has zero fat. It's fat-free until we process it into, candy, then it's not. So cacao is used in smoothies, desserts, and dips, and it's typically found in the baking aisle if a store is going to have it. This is organic, raw cacao, and when we get to the dessert section, I'll be using this to make some pudding. Next are dates. There's two types of dates out there, medjool dates and deglet noor dates. So dates are often used as sweeteners, and they're a very healthy sweetener because it's a whole food. It's a date. It makes desserts, sauces, and smoothies, and the medjool dates are the larger, chewy, and more sweet dates. So these usually come with a pit in them, so you do have to remove the pit before you use these in anything. And these are usually found in the produce section of the store on an end cap, or the store I go to now has started putting these by the other dates, but usually they're in the produce section. Deglet noor dates are smaller, and these are usually packaged like Sunsweet dates or some type of, other commercial brand. They're typically sold in most stores by the raisins, by the dried fruit. So these are smaller, and they're still quite sweet though. You're not losing any sweetness with these. Oops. And so those are the two types of dates. Be sure you check for the pits before you use those big ones for sure. Now miso this is miso. It's usually found in the refrigerated section of health food stores. And what it is, it's a fermented soy paste, which is similar in texture to peanut butter. So it's typically a mixture of soybeans, grains, salt, and a fermenting agent. Let me see if I can show you. I don't have much left in here. But as you can see, it's like a paste. It's almost like a paste that you can, smush around. This is usually used in Japanese cooking. Of course, you're probably familiar with miso soup. And it adds that salty umami flavor to dishes. So if a store is going to have it, it's usually in the Asian section. Most times, though, in the refrigerated section of a health food store. Next are nuts and nut butters, which are sold everywhere. And with nut butters, anyone, if it's peanut butter, almond butter, cashew butter, which I don't have on hand, I just ordered it. Always look for ones that do not have added oils. And you want to be sure it's raw nuts if possible and not roasted. Sometimes it's hard to find that. But many nut butters have palm oil and other tropical oils added, and you do not need that. These brands are okay because the ingredients are peanuts. That's the ingredient in here. That's what we want. Smucker's Natural says peanuts and 1% or less of salt. So that's okay too. So there's creamy natural, there's creamy chunky, there's a chunky variety of Smucker's. And when you open these, of course, you'll see all the oil, which is separated and is floating on the top. Some people pour that off. I don't. I mix it right back in because it's the natural oil, which has separated from the whole food. So if you are trying to use less fat, though, you could pour some of that off if you want. I know many people that do. I think the peanut butter loses a little of its creaminess when you do that, but it's certainly an option. Another ingredient that you're going to run across, and we'll probably be talking about this as we cook, is nutritional yeast, called Nooch for short. And what nutritional yeast is, in fact, it comes in bulk. That's why I have it in my own homemade little jar here, my plastic container, because you have to store it somehow. But what it is, it's a yeast organism that's grown on molasses and then harvested, washed, and dried to deactivate it. So it's not an activated yeast like you would use in baking or something. This has a really strong cheesy flavor. Nutritional yeast is great if you're looking to make faux Parmesan or add it to any cheese recipe that you're making. Or sometimes just a little sprinkle on top of a soup or a pasta dish gives it just that little cheese flavor. So this can be found in bulk in most health food stores or some of the main grocery stores that now carry bulk items. Pastry flour is another thing you might run across. This is whole wheat pastry flour, and I'm sorry I don't have the bag that it came in. I always put it into this large plastic jar to store it. But pastry flour, so it may be new to your kitchen. It contains less gluten than regular whole wheat flour. This is whole wheat pastry flour, and it produces softer, lighter baked goods, basically. So it's good for muffins, pancakes, and a bunch of different recipes. So some grocery stores carry it, but you may have to visit a natural food store in order to find it. The next ingredient to talk about is seitan, which I'm going to be making stuffed peppers with today to show you that. Seitan, here's one brand of it. It's cubed. It's a vegan meat substitute that's made from gluten. Speaking of gluten, you would not eat this if you were gluten-free, but it comes in a seal-packed container in chunk form or strips, or sometimes you can find it ground up, but it's harder to find the ground variety in our area, so I usually buy the chunks and then grind it up, as I'm going to show you in the cooking video that's in this module. So seitan has the look and texture of meat. It can take on whatever flavor you're cooking with, and sometimes you can buy it in different flavors too, like Italian flavor. All right, that is seitan. And then smoked paprika. I didn't even know what smoked paprika was until I started cooking plant-based. I knew paprika, of course, but smoked paprika is really, really good. It adds just the right flavor to so many dishes. They say it's the Spanish cousin to the more widely used Hungarian paprika. So it's made from pimento peppers that have been dried and smoked over an oak fire and then ground into this fine powder. So it's used in vegan cheese, soups, stews, all sorts of things found in the spice section of most stores. Tahini is, and we've talked about this before, is a ground paste made from sesame seeds. It's runny, but when you stir it, it can be, it's kind of a thick, like this, not real creamy, not real thin, but it is used to, as a staple, usually in Middle Eastern dishes. And if a store stocks it, it's probably near the peanut butter. That's where this is usually found. But check the ingredients because some of them have added oils. This one just says organic round sesame seeds, which is what we want. Tamari is another soy product. This one is all non-GMO. We want to look for non-GMO or organic whenever we're purchasing soy products. And by the way, speaking of soy products, there's a PDF in this module called Is It Safe to Eat Soy, in which I talk about which soy foods are safe to eat and which should be avoided. There's a lot of confusion out there about soy because of the phytoestrogens in soy. And those phytoestrogens, phyto meaning plant, do not raise the estrogen levels in humans. Anyway, read the PDF and just know that it's safe to consume whole soy products such as tofu, tamari, edamame, tempeh, miso. All of these soy products are fine to eat as long as they're organic. And then studies show that even eating just 3 servings a day of that, if you choose to do so, is protective against cancer. So if you don't like soy, there's no need to eat it. If you don't like tofu, no problem. You do not need to eat it for good health, but there's no need to avoid it totally either. In fact, we're going to make a pudding or some type of dessert out of tofu later in this module, just so you can see it takes on the flavor of whatever we're going to use it with. Anyway, back to the tamari. Tamari is a Japanese sauce made from fermented soybeans, and it's slightly less salty than soy sauce. So tamari and Bragg's are often interchangeable. So if something calls for soy sauce and you don't have tamari, you could use Bragg's and vice versa. Okay, this is typically found in the Asian section of most stores, by the way, the tamari. Next is tempeh, and I don't have that here as to show you. I'm not a big fan of tempeh. A lot of people love it. I just don't, so I don't usually have it here. But it's a cake-like substance made from cooked and slightly fermented soybeans. And it's usually ground with grain too. Some type of grains are mixed in. So it's used as a meat replacement for a lot of plant-based cookings, and it can be found in health food stores or natural food stores. And don't let the fact that I'm not a fan of it affect you. Please try it. I mean, you can make tempeh bacon strips. There's lots of things that can be made from it. Last is tofu. Let's talk a little bit about tofu since we were just talking about soy. This is also known as bean curd when you're ordering food at a Chinese restaurant, right? You'll see bean curd listed there. It's just coagulated soy milk that's been pressed into a solid white block, sort of like they would make cheese, only this is made from soy milk. There's varying varieties. There's silken, soft, firm, extra firm, and silken tofu, such as these. Morinu is a great brand of silken tofu, and it's usually found on the shelf. Some places have it in the refrigerator section, but it's usually found on the shelf in the Asian section of the store. This is good to make puddings, mayonnaise, sour cream, anything that's soft. That's when you would want to use the silken variety. Now the firm and extra firm tofu, such as this brand, Nasoya is a good brand. These are the water-packed tofus that are used to make things like stir fries where you want to cube it. You know, it's not a soft, silky thing. You'd want to cut this into cubes and marinate it. Or you could use this in soup, or you could even make baked tofu. I love to use this marinated in a lettuce wrap that we make that's just awesome. So these are always found in the refrigerated section. If it's water-based, it's going to be in the refrigerated section, and if it's shelf-stable, you might find it in either place, the shelf or the refrigerated section in the produce section typically. So that is it. I'm sure you're going to maybe run across some other things that you're wondering what it is or where to get it. Feel free to reach out and let me know what you're looking for. I'll do my best to help you find whatever it is that you need. Okay, thanks for watching.